Wow. Hey, much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Thanks for tuning in once again. I appreciate you guys being here. Shout out to all of you tuning in. Appreciate it always. Today, we're just going to go ahead and continue our research with the ancient giants of North America, or even just the Americas. All right. We got more to add, more to look into, and a little extra bonus here on the Duhari Indians. I know a lot of people know about that. So, what is that? Well, we'll see what it is. We're going to probably have future videos on that as well. But we're going to go ahead and add another one here to the giant research. So, once again, thanks for tuning in. All right. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let's go ahead and get started. And we're back in the book, here to review for educational purposes. Fair use. The book Ancient America's Lost Giants, Discovering Ancient America. This is by Javiant Hayes. Support the author, get the book if you like it, the physical copy. Have a little PDF copy on the Patreon if you like. So kind of continuing where we left off last time, we are on chapter 5 here. Let's see what drop we can get out of here. Remember, always be ready to dodge the hijack and pull out the babies, pull out the good stuff. It says here, chapter 5, Giants of the Northeast. In 1521, pirate conquistador Pedro de Quejo sailed to the Carolina coast on a secret slaving mission. There you go. What were they doing? These weren't explorations. These were literally slave raids they were conducting in these times, the so-called Spanish and Portuguese, on American Indians, not Africans. You see, this is their source, one of their sources for the slaves, the local population. Again, they sailed to the Carolina coast on a secret slaving mission where he accidentally discovered a tribe of giant white American Indians. Initially described as European, the Duhari tribe of the Carolinas was available, and unlike any Indian encampment the conquistadors had seen. It's even been speculated by some historians that the Duhari were the leftover survivors from a lost Irish expedition in the 1100s, while other scholars maintain that Duhari are from an even older unknown race in the Americas. So, when it comes to the Duhari guys, there is a whole legend that, they might be leftover, whatever. I always think they're looking at it in reverse, right? In reverse. Maybe they are related to some ancient Irish, but in reverse, going out of here, the true old world. Now, okay, let's just keep reading. It says the Duhari were tall with red to brown hair that hung to the ground, their faces covered with full, lush beards. All right, that doesn't mean that could be people of copper complexion, light complexion, dark complexion, They made cheese from their milk, similar to how the ancient Gaelic tribes in Ireland and Scotland did before the English introduced them to dairy cows. So these are the correlations that they have to try to say, oh, they're probably from Ireland because they both made cheese from their milk, right? That's what they're saying. So I actually looked up. So let's keep going. The Duhari even had horses, which was strange since the Spanish were supposed to be the ones that introduced the horse to the Americas. All right? You guys see that? What it's saying here? So there's supposed to be stories of them having horses already, right? Or even breeding them. But we already know horses were already here when the Europeans arrived. We know horses originated in the Americas. We got a whole video proving that. Apparently, the Duhari didn't receive the memo, as the conquistador Lucas Vasquez de Leon subsequently reported that the Duhari owned several horses and had domesticated livestock way before any Spanish conquistador had shown up. Okay? So you see what they're saying about somebody we already have investigated, Lucas Vasquez de Leon. We know all about his expedition to the Carolinas. These are really, really good, important videos. It debunks the 1619 first African slaves story. His expedition. We've done many videos on it. So it says Data, the king of Duhari, was described by the Spanish as being a giant. All right, so either way, besides all that, they were very tall people, right? These Duhari, right? While Data's wife, the queen, was described as being just as tall as the king. When De Leon was dispatched to the Carolinas to investigate this matter of giant so-called whites with reddish beards, yeah, maybe they could have been light-skinned people here, right? He got some first-hand experience and strange things. First off, De Leon was already familiar with ancient giants, as he allegedly carried around a giant fossilized femur bone as a personal relic. See, I didn't know that. Like, we haven't read that. I don't know if he wrote that. I don't know where he's getting this from, but that's interesting if he did, right? He's saying De Leon had a fossilized femur. Fossilized, it must be very old. Being a worthy traveler as well, he had lots of experience when it came to identifying native tribes in regard to the Duhari. He clearly noted that they were not Native Americans, but white men, possibly European. All right. So-called white, pale skin, all that light skin. Again, America, the true old world. Show me how when they came, if they're from Europe. Even though he's saying possibly, right? Possibly European. That's guessing. Second, to stress the fact that the king and queen were much taller than the average American Indians they ruled over. And instead of teepee, they lived in a rounded stone palace. See, now this is pretty good drop, right? Perhaps even stranger was that of Duhari seemed to possess an ancient form of pyrotechnic weaponry, such as mini rockets or sparklers. You guys hear that? Peter Martyr de Anguera recorded the Alion's quest in his book, The Orbe Novo. The reference to sparklers is made during a visit by a shaman. White man, huh? So, what we're gonna do, guys? Because it says possibly European. He don't know that part, right? So we're gonna go ahead and go to the primary source and see what it says. Okay, we're just gonna. So first, before we read the book, just to get people familiar with who we're talking about, is Peter Martyr of Anghiera, or Pietro. So this is a actual website that was in Italian. I kind of translated it. Just so you guys can know, right? Italian historian and geographer. He was born 1457, passed away in 1526. This is the time period we're talking about. Descendant of a family originally from Anghiera, the current Anghiera in the province of Varese. All right, so it's all in Spain. This is the actual cover of the book he wrote back in his time. Okay, it says from first book of the history of the West Indies by Pietro Martyr and the Anghiera, published 1534. Huh? So again, that's the hijack with the whitewash images. Petrus Martyr Anglerus. All right. Was an Italian historian at the service of Spain during the Age of Exploration. He wrote the first accounts of the explorations in Central and South America and a series of letters and reports grouped in the original Latin publications of 1511 to 1530 into sets of 10 chapters called Decades. His Decades of the New World, the Orbe Novo, are a great value in the history of geography and discovery. He is somebody they quote a lot, guys. He describes the first contact of Europeans and Native American civilizations in the Caribbean, North America, and Mesoamerica, and includes the first European reference to India rubber. The work was first translated into English in 1555 and in a fuller version in 1912. Okay. So Peter Martyr was a prolific writer. He is estimated to have composed some 800 letters addressed to various illustrious persons relating events in Spain and the Spanish court. Written in a journalistic style, often quite gossipy. Moving in court circles, Peter Martyr was personally acquainted with most of the leading figures of the day, and it is from his letters that historians have drawn much of the details about their physical appearance, personality, quirks, and anecdotes. All right. So this is a book that actually I've been wanting to get into with you guys. We're going to definitely get into complete readings of his books on this Novus Ordi, but we're going to go to a specific part of Volume 2, the English translation here. Remember they said a 1912 version. This is what we're looking at. The Orbe Novo, 8 Decades of Peter Martyr de Anglera. Okay. and we go to a specific letter. I'm going to show you guys who the letter was written to. So we go to about 245, page 245, and just wanted you to see that, as they said, he wrote numerous letters. This is one of the letters, and so they turn each letter into book one, book two, or chapter one, chapter two, whatever. So it says that this is to the Viscount Francesco Maria Sforza, Duke of Milan. This is what he wrote to him. Peter Martyr wrote to him. So we're going to go to a specific part of this letter. And again, we're definitely going to get full readings of this book. There's a lot of drop to pull out of here and interpret it on our own. Remember when this was written back in the 1500s, okay? Now he says to the guy from Milan, the Duke of Milan, right? Duke, Edomite, huh? Dukes, huh? So Peter says, let us return to the country of these unfortunates, from which we have somewhat wandered. I believe this country is near that of Bacalaos, discovered by Cabot in the service of England some 26 years ago, or the land of Bacalais, of which I have already written at length. So what he's talking about when he's saying that, that's Newfoundland up there, in those areas of New England. I'm sorry, north of or on top of New England, right? That's what he was talking about. This is, John Cabot was there very early on. But it's not the same place where we're going to be reading about. Okay, it says, I shall now indicate their astronomical position, their religious rites, their products, and their customs. These countries appear to be situated the same distance from the pole and under the same parallel as Vandalia in Spain, commonly called Andalusia. The exploration of the country occupied by a few days. So you see, they had to travel a few days down, actually, right, to get to the place they're going to talk about now. It says it extends a great distance in the same direction as the land where the Spaniards anchored. Yeah, that's where the Spaniards were, right? In the Carolinas. The first district visited are called Chicorana and Duhari, okay? Chicorana and Duhari. Before I begin, just want to read this real quick. Chicora, right? Look what it says on Wikipedia, right? Chicora was a legendary Native American kingdom or tribe sought during the 16th century by various European explorers in present-day South Carolina. They're trying to say it's a legendary one. We've got videos where we discuss the possibility of who the Chicora are. And we got that from the other book we've been reading about the Southeast Indians. Guys, I don't know if you remember. They most likely were talking about the Chacori, Eastern Siouan people, the Chacori, Chicora, Chacori, Chacori. They're just saying it a different little way, right? Chacori. They may be the same as the Sugari, as both are Catawba people. Chacori, Chicora, Chacori. Okay, it's not legendary. Keep reading though. It says the legend originated after Spanish slave traders, all right, captured an Indian they called Francisco de Chicora in 1521. So guys, Peter is going to quote Francisco de Chicora, this guy they got kidnapped, and you guys are going to see what happens. It says, afterward, they came to treat Francisco's home country as a land of abundant wealth and natural resources. The Chicora legend influenced both the Spanish and the French in their attempts to colonize North America for the next 60 years, all right? They're trying to look for this mythical Chicora, huh? It says in 1521, Spanish slavers Pedro de Quejo, which we just read about in the other book, and Francisco Cordillo embarked on an expedition from the Caribbean to the little explored mainland of what is now the southeastern United States. On June 24th, they sighted what is thought to be the area around the mouth of the Santee River. They named their discovery the land of St. John the Baptist, or San Juan Bautista. Yeah, so we got this, right? For the next 22 days, they explored the river and nearby Winyah Bay and made contact with the locals, including, they claimed, a town of people called Chicora, right? Chicora. Ultimately, the slavers compelled around 60 Indians to board their ships and then sailed off without warning, all right? They kidnapped them, intending to sell them as captives into slavery in Hispaniola. And that's what they did, guys. Guys, this is what I'm saying. What Africans? They say they were replacing the local population, the Indians, with Africans. And look, how many more different accounts that we have to show you. They were bringing Indians, other Indians there. Among the captives was an Indian who the Spanish eventually named Francisco de Chicora. Okay, that's who we're gonna read about right now. I just wanted you guys to have a little context. Okay, so they're saying they reached a place called Chicora, right? Chicorana, Chacori, Chicorana, and Duhari. So what is Duhari? Because that word, they might be another way of calling whatever they call in Duhari. It might be, a whole different name, a different tribe, right? It says the natives of Chicorana have a well brown skin. They have a well brown skin, okay? So the natives of Chicorana, the Chicori were well brown skin. What do you mean, well? Yeah, so-called black, copper colored tribes. Well, uh, many so-called black folks are well brown skin too. So what we talking about? Either way, we're not just trying to generalize. We're just letting you know. Look, they're letting you know there was people of dark complexion. There was Indians. The Chicorana were well brown skin, like our sunburned peasants. Huh. And their hair is black. The men let their hair grow to the waist, and the women wear theirs longer. Both sexes plait their hair, and they are beardless, whether nature so created them or whether this is the result of some drug or whether they use a depilatory like the people of Temistitan, nobody can say. In any case, they like to show a smooth skin. So, interesting. Remember, this is supposed to be a translation from the 1500s. This is why I'm like, did they really say some drug? Or what exactly did Peter Martyr say? I think he wrote that in Latin. I think he wrote it in Latin or Italian, the original one. So what does it originally say? If anybody want to help out with that, if you guys find the original and you want to translate it, I mean, this account right here. I must cite another witness whose credit is not less among laymen than that of Dean Alvarez amongst priests, namely the licentiate Lucas Vasquez Ailon. All right, remember, we got whole videos on Lucas Vasquez expedition and how it debunked 1619 and all that other stuff, right? And showing you who they were enslaving, not Africans, but Indians. So it says that he is a citizen of Toledo, member of the Royal Council of Hispaniola, and one of those at whose expense the two ships had been equipped. Commissioned by the Council of Hispaniola to appear before the Royal India Council, he urgently asked that he might be permitted to again visit that country and found a colony. He brought with him a native of Chicorana as his servant. This man had been baptized under the Christian name of Francisco. That's what we just read about him, Francisco de Chicora, united to the surname of his native country, Chicorana. While Alion was engaged on his business here, I sometimes invited him and his servant Francisco Chicorana to my table. That's Peter, right? Peter's saying he met them, right? Listen, this Chicorana is not devoid of intelligence. He interviewed Francisco Chicora and Alion. That's according to Peter, right? This is according to history. This is what mainstream historians go to. They believe almost everything here, right? So it says this Chicorana is not devoid of intelligence. He understands readily and has learned the Spanish tongue quite well. The letters of his companions, which the licentiate Alion himself showed to me, and the curious information furnished me by Chicorana will serve me for the remainder of my narrative. Each may accept or reject my account as he chooses. Envy is a plague natural to the human race, always seeking to depreciate and to search for weeds in another's garden, even when it is perfectly clean. This pest afflicts the foolish or people devoid of literary culture who live useless lives like cumberers of the earth. Leaving the coast of Chicorana on one hand, the Spaniards landed in another country called Duhari. Oh, now they're going to get to the part where they're in Duhari, right? Where the land called Duhari, and this is what they call the Duhari Indians, this legend of the Duhari Indians. You guys, if you just Google it, you're going to see about Irish this, Irish tribe, Irish, right? But this is the primary source, okay? Does it literally say Irish? And what does it literally say? Let's see. So continuing, Ayon says the natives are white men. Okay? So supposedly it does say that. This is supposed to be Alion's words, but this is according to Peter. So it's a third party also. What does it really say in Latin? Does it say white like white? Or does it say fair? Does it say light? But all right, let's go. These are they might be talking about light-skinned people. They might be talking about light-skinned people here, right? And like I said, America's a true old world. And his testimony is confirmed by Francisco Chicorana. So supposedly Francisco Chicorana, who's an Indian, right? His people are well brown skinned, but he's saying that Duhari are also, if that's what it says, white man. Okay, that's okay. Don't be surprised, man. There's probably a lot of shades here. Their hair is brown and hangs to their heels. Listen, hangs to their heels. See how long their hair is? They are governed by a king of gigantic size. There you go, the giant, right? Called Data, whose wife is as large as himself. All right, so we confirmed that too. They have 5 children. In place of horses, the king is carried on the shoulders of strong young men. See, he doesn't say they have horses. It says instead of horses, the king is carried in the shoulders of strong young men who run with him to the different places he wishes to visit. At this point, I must confess that the different accounts cause me to hesitate. The dean and Aion do not agree. For what one asserts concerning these young men acting as horses, acting like horses, the other denies. The dean said, I have never spoken to anybody who has seen these horses, to which Aion answered, I have heard it told by many people, while Francisco Chicorana, although he was present, was unable to settle this dispute. You see, the Indian didn't verify. So what are they talking about? Because he's saying they're acting like horses. Did they have horses? Yes or no? See, it's not it's not very conclusive, guys. This is what I'm trying to show you here. This is the primary source, right? This is even they're like talking about their dispute about it. Could I act as arbitrator? I would say that, according to the investigations I have made, these people were too barbarous and uncivilized to have horses. Another country near Duhari is called Chapita. Pearls are found there, and also a kind of stone resembling pearls, which is much prized by the Indians. In all these regions they visited, the Spaniards noticed herds of deer, similar to our herds of cattle. Look, they had domesticated deer. They had as livestock deer. Listen, just like how people have cattle today. These deer bring forth and nourish their young in the houses of the natives. During the daytime, they wander freely through the woods in search of their food, and in the evening, they come back to their little ones who have been cared for, allowing themselves to be shut up in the courtyards and even to be milked. You guys hear that? Be milked. They were milking deer when they have suckled their fawns. So this is why a lot of people say these are Irish people, that, so-called white Irish that came, and that's why they're saying they're white men, and that's why they're a little different, and that's why they got herds of deer, because the ancient Gaelic people supposedly did that. So this is the whole correlation. But I still see it. They might be seen in reverse. What if these people are originally from that same people? Oh yeah, maybe they had come back, before Europeans came and they had made it here and settled. They might have been more fairer or light skinned. Who knows, guys? But I'm just showing you the primary source. Anything else we add is conjecture, even my opinions, even these people's opinions, anybody else's opinions on the internet. Okay? The only milk the natives know is that of the does, from which they make cheese. Okay? Deers, does, they make cheese. Come on, guys. Indians making cheese from deer's milk. Wow. They also keep a great variety of chickens, ducks, geese, and other similar fowls. They eat maize bread, you see? Maize bread, cornbread, similar to that of the islanders. But they do not know the yucca root, from which kasabi, the food of the nobles, is made. The maize grains are very like our Genoese millet, and in size are as large as our peas. The natives cultivate another cereal called chati. This is believed to be millet, but it is not certain, for very few Castilians know millet, as it is nowhere grown in Castile. All right, so you see, we probably had millet over here too, is what they're letting you know. This country produces various kinds of potatoes. I was talking about the Carolinas, guys. Potatoes, but all of small varieties. Potatoes are edible roots, like our radishes, carrots, parsnips, and turnips. I have already given many particulars in my first decades concerning these potatoes, yuca, and other foodstuff. All right, again, we're gonna get the whole drop, guys. The Spaniards speak of still other regions, Hata, Chamunambe, and Tije, all of which are believed to be governed by the same king. So with the Duhani, right? In the last named, the inhabitants wear a distinctive priestly costume, and they are regarded as priests and venerated as such by their neighbors. They cut their hair, leaving only two locks growing on their temples. On their temples, listen, like the Egyptians, which are bound under the chin. Huh. When the natives make war against their neighbors, according to the regrettable custom of mankind, these priests are invited by both sides to be present, not as actors but as witnesses of the conflict. When the battle is about to open, they circulate among the warriors who are seated or lying on the ground and sprinkle them with the juice of certain herbs they have chewed with their teeth. Oh man, that kind of sounds a little nasty. Just as our priests at the beginning of the Mass sprinkle the worshippers with a branch dipped in holy water. When the ceremony is finished, the opposing sides fall upon one another. While the battle rages, the priests are left in charge of the camp, and when it is finished, they look after the wounded, making no distinction between friends and enemies, and busy themselves in burying the dead. The inhabitants of this country do not eat human flesh. Why would they, man? The prisoners of war are enslaved by the victors. It says the Spaniards have visited several regions of that vast country. They are called Arambe, Huacaya, Cohate, Tasaka, and Tahor. The color of the inhabitants is dark brown, okay? You see that? So only the Duhari are being supposedly called white. Everybody else is, you see? Dark brown. Can't make this up. Body bag for the illusion. So-called black. Shout out to drop. All right. Dark brown. None of them have any system of writing, but they preserve traditions of great antiquity and rhymes and chants. They what? They preserve what? Traditions of great antiquity and rhymes and chants. They rap in rhymes and chants. Just like the Creeks, so-called Creeks. Remember, they were also saying they were dark brown. So is this the original source they're getting this from? From Peter Martyr? You guys see that? Dancing and physical exercise are held in honor. Physical exercise, dancing. They got rhymes, they chant, they got rhymes, they like physical exercise and dancing. And they are passionately fond of ball games. All right, in which they exhibit the greatest skill. Come on now. So this is the original primary source from where they get that of the creek, so-called creek. See that? Now look at this. So they were saying creeks, but now he was talking about all these Arambi, Guayca. He was talking about the same regions they were looking in the east, right? Possibly could be related to Greeks, but could be other people too. But you see, I'm gonna just break it down again. They are dark brown. They be rhyming and dancing. They be rhyming and dancing. They like exercise, and they like ball games, which they're very good at. Come on now, put two and two together, yo. The women know how to spin and sew. Although they are partially clothed with skins of wild beasts, they use cotton such as the Milanese, called bombacio, and they make nets of the fiber of certain tough grasses, just as hemp and flax are used for the same purposes in Europe. There is another country called Insignanim, whose inhabitants declare that according to the tradition of their ancestors, there once arrived amongst them, men with tails. Wow. A man with a tail, listen, a meter long and as thick as a man's arm. Whoa. See, now this when it gets crazy. Now, hey, this is Peter saying this in 1500s. But maybe it's true. This tail was not movable like those of the quadrupeds, but formed one mass, as we see in the case with fish and crocodiles, and was as hard as a bone. Whoa. When these men wished to sit down, they had consequently to have a seat with an open bottom. And if there was none, they had to dig a hole more than a cubit deep to hold their tails and allow them to rest. Wow. That sounds really crazy. Can you guys picturing this? Listen, this is crazy. That's why I'm saying we got to get into these old books, see what they're saying, try to make sense out of them, right? Because their fingers were as long as they were broad, and their skin was rough, almost scaly. What are they talking about? Scaly skin with tails. This even human? Hmm. They ate nothing but raw fish, and when the fish gave out, they all perished, leaving no descendants. Wow. See, now this becomes like a folk tale, right? Or is this an oral tradition that they got from the Indians, or what is this? This is very interesting, though, right? Trying to follow up on, right? These fables, hell, they're calling it a fable. These fables and other similar nonsense have been handed down to the natives by their parents. I told you, they're getting it from the Indians. So, hey, what are they talking about here, right? People with scaly skin, rough, and a tail, like a crocodile. Listen, wow. So these are oral traditions that they just writing about Peter. Let us now notice their rites and ceremonies. So, real quick, we're not going to read anymore, but a little bit on book 3, it says the natives have no temples. Listen, the natives have no temples, but use the dwellings of their sovereigns as such. As a proof of this, we have said that a gigantic sovereign called Data, listen, ruled in the province of Duhari. So again, verifying the other book we're going to go back to about giants, saying that Duhari are like very tall giant people. So we're not thinking like huge giants, probably what, 8 footers, maybe possibly 9 footers, 7 footers, maybe. So listen to what it says though. So this king, Data, ruled in the province of Duhari, whose palace was built of stone. Whose palace was built of stone. So yeah, we're able to verify they said that. So in the footnote it says vestiges of ancient stone buildings have been found in various parts of the territory now embraced within the area of the United States. Okay, I have a video on that, guys. All these stone in the middle of the forest, all these stone buildings, castles, all this stuff, forts, watchtowers, all up in the southeast and the forest, even in the northeast and the Appalachians, are everywhere, guys. So they're letting you know that this could be true because there is vestiges of ancient stone buildings which have been found in various parts of the territory of the U.S. Norton's Horsford, several articles on such ruins are published in the bulletins of the Smithsonian Institute. All right, we're gonna definitely have to follow up on that, okay, and add it to our other ones that we have already. But just wanted you to show, okay. So we're able to verify the other book. We're gonna just read a little bit more. It says, while other houses were built of lumber covered with thatch or grasses, stone palaces. Listen. In the courtyard of this palace, the Spaniards found 2 idols as large as a 3-year-old child, one male and one female. These idols are both called Inamahari and had their residence in the palace. Twice each year they are exhibited, the first time of the sowing season, when they are invoked to obtain a successful result for their labors. We will later speak of the harvest. Thanksgivings, listen, Thanksgivings are offered to them if the crops are good. They're giving thanksgiving to the idols, he's saying. In the contrary case, they are implored to show themselves more favorable the following year. All right. So again, just wanted to read this brief part of Peter Martyr's original accounts from the 1500s, just to confirm if that book was making it up or it actually was quoting sources. And as you guys saw, we were able to confirm most of it. The horse part, not really. That's inconclusive, but we already know again, horses were here and they originated in the Americas, okay? We're going to go back to that book, the Giants book that we were reading earlier. All right, now that we've verified all that on the primary source. So again, back in the book, Ancient America's Lost Giants. by Shavian Hayes. And we left off where they were saying that, about the Duhari, everything we just read, right? Well, not everything, because we didn't read anything about him having a fossilized femur bone of a horse, but whatever. It did say that at the end here, perhaps even stranger was that the Duhari seemed to possess an ancient form of pyrotechnic weaponry, such as mini rockets or sparklers. Peter Martyr and the Angera recorded the Alion's quest in his book, The Orbe Novo. The reference to sparkles is made during a visit by a shaman. So guys, I didn't read that part, so I don't know. I didn't, and I looked for like the word sparkle to see if it would come up, and it didn't, and I just didn't get it. So it says when the chief is at death's door. This is according to the source we just came from, and about to give up his soul, they send away all witnesses, and then surrounding his bed, they perform some secret jugglery, which makes him appear to vomit sparks and ashes. It looks like sparks jumping from a bright fire, or those sulfured papers, which people throw into the air to amuse themselves. These sparks rushing through the air and quickly disappearing look like those shooting stars which people call leaping wild goats. The moment the dying man expires, a cloud of those sparks shoots up 3 cubits high with a noise and quickly vanishes. That sounds like a fireworks, guys. Sounds like fireworks. Listen, they hail this flame as the dead man's soul, bidding it at last farewell and accompanying its flight with their wailing tears and funeral cries, absolutely convinced that it has taken its flight to heaven. All right. And then it has one for the source, and that's at the end of the book. Now, in the footnotes, right in the back of the book for chapter 5, which we're reading, as it says here for source number 1, check it out, guys. It says John R. Swanton's Early History of the Creek Indians. Okay? Creek Indians. So that's where he's getting that reference about the sparkle. That's why I didn't find it in Peter. He made it seem like that was on Peter's book. So going back with the sparkles, that's from that book as well. So a book definitely we should also read fully. Like a lot of these books that has a lot of little drop here and there, we got to read them a whole chapter sometimes, right? It says 200 years later, a German settler was excavating some farmland when he came across more of these mysterious sparklers inside one of the burial mounds of the native Tuscarora of the Carolina interior. And that's from the Colonial Records of North Carolina, describes what happened. After the tomb was covered, I noticed something which passes imagination, and which I should not believe had I not seen it with my own eyes. From the tomb arose a little flaming fire like a big candlelight, which went up straight in the air, and noiselessly went straight over the cabin of the deceased widow, and thence further across a big swamp above 1 mile broad, until it finally vanished from sight in the woods. At that sight I have weighed to my surprise, and asked what it meant, but the Indians laughed at me, as if I ought to have known that this was no rarity among them. They refused, however, to tell me what it was. They were making fun of him because he'd never seen fireworks. It says other giant tribes of the Carolinas were the Chicora and the Tuscarora. So Chicori, right? And Tuscarora, who lived near the Duhari, and also had legends of giant white men who once lived and wandered in the lands of their forefathers. In his book, 6 Nations, Tuscarora Indian David Cusick wrote that the giants were one of the Great Spirit's original human creations. The Great Spirit's original human creations, huh? Some of these giants were reportedly discovered in Wilden, North Carolina, in 1874 when workers broke through a catacomb while digging for a railroad company. The man who found the bodies described the femur bones as long as a full leg of an ordinary man, and the skeletons were at least 8 or 9 feet tall. All right? At least 9 feet tall. In Marion County, West Virginia, an ancient civilization long since vanished left behind artifacts such as earthen forts, burial mounds, petroglyphs, inscribed stones, and of course giant skeletons. Workers excavating a root cellar in Palatine found 2 large mummified human skeletons, both measuring more than 7 feet tall. but thieves stole the bones the next day. It's rumored that they ended up on the lucrative Indian artifacts torrent circuit that existed in the early 19th century near Pawpaw Creek at Rivesville, another small former coal mining town in West Virginia. Bridge builders smashed into the earth and plowed through sets of heavy clay layers until shockingly unearthing three giant skeletons, each with reddish strands of hair. Reddish strands of hair. All right? Check it out. This is what they're saying here. Before the bones deteriorated from being exposed to the air, a doctor came in to examine them and ascertained the skeletons to be at least 8 feet tall. While exploring a cave in 1882, amateur archaeologist F.M. Fetty discovered the remains of giant humans sitting with stone and flint artifacts surrounding his prehistoric skeleton. So, right now we're not getting the sources, but, hey, we just got to read what it's saying, right? So that's why I like a little bit the other book that we read about giants where it lists the newspapers, right, where it's coming from. At least we can follow up on that. It says here, the next summer, another giant skeleton was discovered near the same area. That doesn't mean it's not true because we already know there's numerous reported accounts that we can verify about the same thing. Giant skeletons being found all over North America. Continues, says this skeleton was almost 8 feet tall, as noted by the settlement's nearest doctor, Samuel Kramer of Smithstown. It seems the lands of Virginia were ripe with these ancient giant skeletons, some of which showcase right here. Some. You see that? Some. That's why you shouldn't generalize. Even our nation's greatest founding father, General George Washington, so-called black man, had an encounter with these ancient giants of the Northeast. Oh, really? Before he was a revolutionary, Washington was a surveyor for wealthy Virginia landowners. This experience put him on the front lines when it came to building new properties and destroying old ones. In 1754, as a colonel of the Virginia colonial militia, armed skirmishes had broken out with France, and Washington was ordered to supervise construction of a new fort in Winchester, Virginia. While digging a new foundation, workers quickly uncovered a long-forgotten cemetery full of 7-foot-tall skeletons. All right, a tribe of 7 foot, a whole family of 7-footers. Listen, buried around Native American artifacts. This is in Winchester, Virginia. Although viewed and reported by Washington, it's not known what happened to the bones after the construction of the fort. And he's saying George Washington himself wrote this. That's what he's saying, right? Washington's discovery gives credibility to the numerous reports of 7-foot-tall skeletons discovered in the Virginia territories. Even a giant skull with a curious set of teeth was discovered near the Potomac Highlands. Archaeologists from the Smithsonian's Ethnological Division of Eastern Mound Studies opened a mound in Iowa that revealed a 7-foot 6-inch skeleton, as reported by the Worthington Advance in 1897. Here we go. That's what I'm talking about when you cite the sources, right? It is a matter of official record that in digging through a mound in Iowa, the scientists found the skeleton of a giant who, judging from actual measurement, must have stood 7 feet 6 inches tall when alive. The bones crumbled to dust when exposed to the air. In 1933, an 8-foot skeleton was discovered by a boy searching for arrowheads in sleepy Steelville, Missouri, from the Steelville Ledger. All right. It says he turned up the complete skeleton of an 8-foot giant. The grisly find was brought to Dr. R.C. Parker here and stretched out to its enormous length in a hallway of his office, where it has since remained the most startling exhibit Steelville has ever had on public view. 3 other reports were published, and a photo was taken comparing a 6-foot-tall man with the 8-foot-tall skeleton, which was shipped from Dr. Parker's office to the Smithsonian and never seen again. And never seen again after it was shipped to the Smithsonian, okay? Shipped from doctor's office and never seen again. Yeah, we're going to highlight that. In addition to these findings, caves in the Ozarks turned up a set of huge, nearly 10-foot tall skeletons with enormous skulls. Recent trips have been made to rediscover these caves, but numerous floods have made it impossible to locate. Acclaimed newspaper reporter Victor Schofield originally reported the discovery in 1913, and he said, while the historical features of the Ozarks held our attention, by far the most fascinating discovery was one made by an aged recluse and naturalist who for 10 years had lived in a shelter cave near where we camped. Dad, Riggins, spent much of his time digging in the ashes which formed the floor of many of these caves. At a depth of more than 3 feet, he found the remains of several giant human skeletons, including an almost perfect skull, which differed in many particulars from a modern specimen. When partly joined, the largest skeleton was almost 10 feet tall. Dad, Riggins, showed us hieroglyphics covering the palisades, thought to be thousands of years old. Wow. So not only did they find giant remains, they found hieroglyphics or inscriptions, right? Inscriptions on the wall or whatever. All right, a 10-footer too, a 10-foot giant. Continuing, it says, however, the 10-footer was easily outdone by the discovery of an 18-foot skeleton. You guys hear that? An 18-foot skeleton found in West Hickory, Pennsylvania in 1870. This giant was covered in iron armor. Listen, an iron armor, including a monstrous iron helmet, corroded with rust. By his side lay a massive 9-foot long sword. A 9-foot long sword. Come on now. As reported by the Baltimore American and Commercial on January 6, 1870. All right? And it says, while William Thompson, assisted by Robert R. Smith, was engaged in making an excavation near the house of the former, about a half-mile north of West Hickory, preparatory to erecting a derrick, they exhumed an enormous helmet of iron, which was corroded with rust. Further, digging brought to light a sword, which measured 9 feet in length. Curiosity incited them to enlarge the hole, and after a little time they discovered the bones of 2 enormous feet. Following up the lead they had so unexpectedly struck, in few hours' time they had unearthed a well-preserved skeleton of an enormous giant, belonging to a species of human family which probably inhabited this and other parts of the world at the time of which the Bible speaks. All right, this is the true old world, biblical lands, when it says, and there were giants in those days, just like the Bible said. The helmet is said to be in the shape of those found among the ruins of Nineveh. Huh. Guys hear that? The bones of the skeleton are remarkably white. The teeth are all in their places and all of them are double and extraordinary size. These relics have been taken to Tionesta, where they are visited by large numbers of people daily. When his giantship was in the flesh, he must have stood 18 feet in his stockings. These remarkable relics will be forwarded to New York early next week. All right, I'm going to go ahead and look at the source for that. And in the notes, the source says number 8, alleged discovery of the body of a giant from the Ashburton Guardia, Volume 8, number 1715 from 1887. Okay? Pretty crazy, right? Nobody knows whether this story is true or whether the 18-foot skeleton ever made it to New York, because it has long disappeared from record. Perhaps this giant skeleton was kin to one of the maritime archaic tribes that explored the Northeast more than 7,000 years ago. We've already discussed alternative theories as to the proposed origins of the North American giants. Another possible theory is that of the global migrations of the Cro-Magnon during the maritime archaic era, 7,000 BC to 2,000 BC, was responsible for mixing their Dwilding's genes with those of the remaining ancient giants that had survived the floods. You know, this is their theories, right? Cro-Magnon. What is Cro-Magnon? What if that's just an ancient American? Archaic type skulls have sloping foreheads, protruding brows, massive jaws, and extra thick cranial walls. Numerous amounts of these archaic giant sized skeletal remains have been found in North America. The appearance of these skeletons in the post Ice Age defies current academic beliefs that each species replaced one another with no interbreeding between them, but it seems the ancient Americas were the breeding grounds. Listen, the ancient Americas were the breeding grounds to a smorgasbord of mysterious donors. Huh. The true old world, huh? And then on the next page, they got this skull right here. You see that? I guess that's what they're showing, an ancient American, right? It says a 35-year-old Cro-Magnon. Okay, this is one they got, a so-called Cro-Magnon, located at the Musée de Léon, Paris. But that's literally what he's just comparing it to the skeletons they found here in the Americas, right? Says the Charleston Daily Mail published a report on October 22nd, 1922, proclaiming one of the most interesting of the 5 state parks is Mound Park at Moundsville, from which that city derived its name. Probably no other relic of prehistoric origin has attracted as wide study among archaeologists as the Grave Creek's mounds. Okay, the Grave Creek mounds. We've done a lot of videos on that, right? Which has given up skeletons of the ancients who constructed it. And we've read what they found in there. Pretty amazing stuff. Archaeologists investigating the mound some years ago dug out a skeleton said to be that of a female because of the formation of the bones. The skeleton was 7 feet 4 inches tall, and the jawbone would easily fit over the face of a man weighing 160 pounds. Tales of immense giants pervade the indigenous folklore of the Appalachian Mountains. Northern Appalachian lands near Pittsburgh unearthed a 9-foot mummy. Listen, a 9-foot mummy from a burial mound on a farm in South Huntington Township in 1887. And neighboring Bradford County registered an accurately measured 8-foot 2-inch skeleton 6 decades earlier, in 1822. In 1878, a giant petrified human head and set of shoulders were discovered at depths of 75 feet in the same Bradford County area, prompting a quick suppression of their discovery. All right, suppression. They hit this. A giant human molar weighing 4 ounces was discovered in a Pittsburgh coal bed, more than 600 feet underground, which makes no sense at all considering that coal supposedly formed during the Carboniferous period, sometime between 286 and 360 million years ago, according to their calculations and stuff, right? This means that giant or no, a tooth shouldn't have been discovered. According to the current human historical timeline, it doesn't make sense. Out of place objects, it doesn't fit the chronology, right? The layer it was found in. The New York Times reported on what at the time seemed like an important scientific discovery made in Sciery, Pennsylvania in 1916. And it says, Professor A.B. Skinner of the American Indian Museum, Professor W.K. Moorhead of Phillips Andover Academy, and Dr. George Donahue, Pennsylvania state historian, who have been conducting researches along the valley of the Susquehanna, have uncovered an Indian mound at Tioga Point on the upper portion of Queen Arthur's Flats on what is known as the Murray Farm, a short distance from Sciery, Pennsylvania, which promises rich additions to Indian lore. In the mound uncovered were found bones of 68 men, which are believed to have been buried 700 years ago. The average height of these men was 7 feet, while many were much taller. Further evidence of their gigantic size was found in large celts or axes hewed from stone or buried in the grave. On some of the skulls, 2 inches above the perfectly formed forehead, were protuberances of bone. Members of the exhibition say that it is the first discovery of its kind on record and a valuable contribution to the history of the early races. The skull and a few bones found in one grave were sent to the American Indian Museum. Outside of this article, there is no further mention of what happened to the bones or the burials of this mysterious, forgotten race. Western Pennsylvania recently unveiled a wood carved statue honoring one of their most respected Indian chiefs. The intricately designed statue of Chief Wetonah was revealed at Mount Pisgah County Park with Bradford County officials and a delegation from the Eastern Delaware nations in attendance. Legend tells us that when Wetonah's bones were reburied for a proper ceremony, a man named Dr. Wilder of Springfield Township measured his skeleton and determined the chief to be at least 8 feet tall. All right, 8 feet tall. And, Tuscaloosa was even taller than that, probably. Despite this, in 1980, the Army Corps of Engineers decided to build a dam. Listen, this is what they're hiding. Wow. All right, that's another future episode for the buried towns and stuff underwater. Despite this, in 1980, the Army Corps of Engineers decided to build a dam on the sacred area and subsequently wiped out any evidence pertaining to Chief Wetonah's bones or any other giant Indian remains that might have survived. You guys hear that? That's what they hid under the waters. Judge Atlee of York County, Pennsylvania, wrote a fascinating note in his pocket almanac about a giant skeleton his friends witnessed seeing in 1708. In company with Chief Justice McKean, Judge Bryan, and others, on our way to Franklin and taking the view of the town in company with Mr. McAllister and several other reasonable inhabitants, we went to Mr. Neese's tan yard, where we were shown a place near the Korean house from whence, in digging to sink a tan bed, some years ago were taken 2 skeletons of a human bodies. They lay close beside each other and measured about 11 feet, 3 inches in height. The bones were entire, but on being taken up and exposed to the air, they presently crumbled and fell to pieces. Mr. McAllister and some others had seen them, and Mr. McAllister, who was a tall man about 6 feet, 4 inches high, mentioned that the principal bone of the leg of one of them, being placed by the side of the leg, reached from his ankle considerably way up his thigh, pointing a small distance below the hip bone. Wow. That's how big he was. Even one of America's first folk heroes, Captain John Smith of Jamestown, Virginia, wrote about the giants of the northeastern coast, describing them in his journals as giant-like, and saying those Susquehannocks came to us. Such great and well-proportioned men are seldom seen, for they seem like giants to the English. All right, the Susquehannock Indians, yes, a lot of stories and accounts of them being very, very tall or giant, right? In 1921, flood waters near Berryville, Virginia, unearthed a graveyard of skeletons, each one measuring about 7 feet 6 inches tall. A 1902 edition of the Western Virginia Historical Magazine Quarterly had an interesting letter to the editor that read, Giant's Axe, Charleston, West Virginia, March 17, 1902. Dear Mr. Lately, some years ago when the Colonel Ben Smith Mound was opened by Professor Norris of the Smithsonian, he found the skeleton of a giant which measured 7 feet 8 inches in length. This occurred about 15 years ago. Now comes a sequel. A few years ago, Joe Foster was plowing near the mound and unearthed a stone axe. This axe is of granite, beautifully made and well preserved. It weighs 7 pounds 8 ounces, the largest ever found about here. Dr. J.N. Mahan bought the axe and has it in his possession. Could this have been the giant's axe? Can you get some of your correspondents to give an article on Indian axes, their history, sizes? All right, that's what the letter said. While plowing land, farmers in Connecticut discovered a forgotten Indian village that was a host to crude copper relics and giant thigh bones more than 20 feet below the surface. Soon scholars and historians descended upon the site, and the discovery made headlines. And it says, skeletons of Stone Age men are dug up in Connecticut. Prehistoric inhabitants of the Nutmeg State were flatheads of great strength and huge teeth. All right, That's the title. It says Bridgeport, Connecticut, August 15th. Two complete skeletons, supposedly belonging to Stone Age people, were unearthed by a team of archaeologists headed by Professor Warren King Moorhead near the Housatonic River at Laurel Beach. The professor and his assistants had been digging in this section for some time and claimed that the section was once inhabited by a forgotten race based on their findings. Both skeletons are well preserved. The bones are rough, denoting great strength, and the skulls are flat and possess perfect sets of unusually sized teeth. Professor Moorhead said it was his belief the bodies were buried in salt water several thousand years ago. Wow, which accounts for their preservation. He also expressed hope that he and his assistant would soon locate a burial ground of an ancient race. Wow. After an excavation of shell mounds revealed some curious relics in 1916, the Logan Republican reported on Professor Norman Wallace's Lemons theories regarding giants that once ruled Maine long before any Europeans showed up, right? Now in Maine, right? All over, guys, you see? Human skulls and bones uncovered in shell mounds at the Pasadena estates by workmen Friday are thought to be the Indian tribe that roamed in this section of the country hundreds of years before America's discovery by European men. It's the opinion of Professor Norman Wallace Lermont, curator and librarian of the Knox Academy of Art and Science, Thomaston, Maine, who is wintering here. Lermont, who is also editor of the Maine Naturalist Journal, a monthly periodical, examined the bones in the downtown offices of the Pasadena estates late Saturday afternoon, and in his preliminary inspection volunteered the belief that one of the two skulls in the possession of Jack Taylor was that of a man over 8 feet tall. Further examination of the bones will be made by the Maine scientists, and he believes that considerable data of importance will be gathered within next week. The bones were in excellent state of preservation. They were encased in clay like receptacles that crumbled at the touch. The skulls, however, were solid. The jaws were square and massive, the teeth whole and void of cavities. The cheekbones were high, the foreheads were high, and not receding as would be expected of age-old human remains. All right, that is the supposed, letter. Continuing, it says gigantic 8-foot tall skeletons were discovered along the banks of the Choptank River, Maryland, by members of the Maryland Academy of Science in 1922. The Choptank takes its name from the tribe of American Indians that lived in this area of Maryland before its settlement by the English. The Choptank were known to be men of large stature and ruled by the giant chiefs of their tribe. Some of their intact 7-foot tall skeletons, taken from mounds near Cambridge, can still be seen in the basement of Baltimore's Academy of Natural Sciences. As the crow flies, Baltimore is just 273 kilometers from New York City, an area of mythical lands and near mythical history. New York has always been the center of attraction when people think about America. Even back in the olden days, New York was an ancient magnet that attracted peoples from all over the globe, especially giants. Especially giants, huh? In 1904, the New York Times reported on a haul of unusual sized skeletons discovered by railroad workers in Wetonah. And it says here, Wetonah, New York, September 6, 1904, right? While a gang of men in the employ of the New York and Harlem Railroad were taking sand from an immense mound near Purdy Station today to fill in an excavation, they unearthed several skeletons of unusual size. The bones are believed to be those of Indians who once lived in this vicinity and belonged to a tribe that was led by the great chief Ticus from the home of the Titicus Valley. Wow. Now a part of the New York watershed takes his name. Besides finding the bones, the workmen also exhumed a score of more of arrowheads, hatchets, and copper implements. It is believed that the large mound in which the relics was found were once the burying ground of the Ticus Indians. The last Indian were seen in the valley a short time after the Revolutionary War. The bones found today were brought to Wetonah and will be re-entered in the local cemetery. And hip-hop wasn't the only thing to come out of the Bronx. Wow, you guys hear that? Ancient giants supposedly kicked it around Fordham long before any famous rappers did, all right? The birth of hip-hop, the Bronx. Hey, I know the story, guys. I was there on Gun Hill Road. Gun Hill Road, I was there with my crew. We were filming. I forget the dude's name, the rapper, good guy. He led us into his neighborhood. We were with Flows from the Gutter, Flows from the Gutter DVD. My boys from Boston, we went down there. Yeah, he showed us around, the birth of hip hop right there, the Bronx. This guy knows. Shout out to Shavian Hayes, the author of this book. But he's saying, hey, there was actually giants kicking it in the hood right there in the Bronx way before Europeans arrived, right? Before it was even a hood. So it says big skeletons in the Bronx. Workmen grading 10th Avenue extension through the northernmost end of Manhattan Island during the past week have unearthed portions of about a dozen ancient human skeletons in a little knoll about where 211th Street will someday run. Some were nearly complete, but of others only the larger bones remained. They appear to have been interred in an upright position, with the heads about 3 feet beneath the surface. Bronx measurements of one skeleton indicates that the man it represents was more than 7 feet tall. An old cannonball was found in or near one of the strange graves. A cannonball, huh? Each body rested beneath an uncut stone set endwise. Many similar stones nearby, as yet undisturbed, indicate that more bones will be found. Wow. All over the Bronx, huh? Most of the reports we've been exposed to have come from reputable sources such as the Washington Post and the New York Times, but it was John Wesley Powell, the Smithsonian's director for the Bureau of Ethnology, and a British secret agent. Wow. So you see that, guys? The director of the Bureau of Ethnology of the Smithsonian, right, was also a British secret agent. What is that called, right? M16? Wow. British secret agent. Now you know who's hiding stuff, right? Who are most responsible for keeping the evidence of giants from reaching the masses on a much broader level. If a report on an ancient giants did happen to leak, they made sure there would be no more follow-up articles, and the original report would eventually slip into the memory hole. They're like the Men in Black, right? The Smithsonian Institution always seems linked to giant skeletons, especially those that went missing, especially to the ones that went missing. As most of the turn of the century reports state that the mysterious bones were shipped off to the institution for further study. More than 100 years later, we know those bones were never seen again, and the Smithsonian continues to deny their existence, as it doesn't fit in with their current teachings models of evolution, okay? You guys hear that? The fake out of, the whole evolutionary theory, right? Darwinism out of Africa. It doesn't fit that narrative. Although left in the dust during the early stages of scientific discovery, thanks to the pioneers and early explorers of America, the giants have remained in the written record and oral histories of the natives. These stories keep alive the hidden history of a lost race that even stretches toward the frigid lands of Canada, a cold and wooded landscape of mysterious strangers and ancient giants. All right, and that's the end of this chapter, guys. So I guess the next chapter is probably going to be talking about Canada, right? So we should get that on another review, another presentation. But I really enjoyed reading this chapter of this, more and more to add to the research we've been doing all these years on the ancient giants of America. Again, let's go to the title of this book. You guys, again, this is Ancient America's Lost Giants, Discovering Ancient America by Shavian Hayes. Shout out to Shavian Hayes. All right. And I hope you guys enjoyed the reading today. Another one to add here to the playlist that we have, the Giants playlist. I have all my giant videos in one playlist, guys. You can just go to my playlist tab on my main page. and you'll find one that's called Ancient Giants of America, or Ancient American Giants, or something like that, or Giants of Ancient America, something like that. Okay. Yeah, pretty amazing, right? This is the true old world, the biblical lands, all that. Yeah, what they reference today. Pretty amazing. You can verify a lot, all this stuff right here. You can check the sources. We've already shown many newspaper articles saying the same thing. We've shown the research, what they found, all that. We know it's a true old world. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for sticking around all the way to the end. Shout out to all my supporters. I appreciate you guys. All right. I'm going to keep going. All right. We're going to keep learning. We're going to keep reviewing the history for educational purposes. All right. Fair use. Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi gente. Hawaii.